We are. This meeting is being recorded, just so everyone knows. I love that was a fun surprise. So I am going to start with Maya. Maya and I are going to begin, and we're going to do a little bit of an introduction, tell you guys what Decrim Illinois is all about, some of the stuff we're doing, and do a call-in. We want to know what's going on in community, what we're missing, and invite you guys to have a seat at the table. So Maya, if you would like to jump in and introduce yourself and give a proper bio, and then I will do the same, and then we will do a screen share.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Tatum. I am a board member of SWAP Chicago, the Sex Worker Outreach Project, and I also serve as the Director of Policy and Advocacy for SWAP Chicago. So I recently just joined the Decrim Illinois Coalition, but my background is in drug policy reform. So I have done things from cannabis legalization to psychedelic access for like medicinal and mental health purposes. And my heart has always been in harm reduction, which is a great segue into sex worker advocacy. And so that's what I've been up to the past 8 years. But yeah, that is my bio. Oh, and I use they, them, or she, her pronouns.
Awesome. Thank you, Maya. And we are so blessed to have Maya on this board. And Maya and I have been doing the late night work. And I'm very, very grateful to have you on the coalition and have someone that is aligned with our purpose. Thank you. And so I am Bella Bathory. I joined the Decrim Illinois Coalition, I think 2-3 years ago. I am also an active member of SWAP USA. I work at Chicago House in their Hope Prevention, and I am transitioning from there to be the lead testing manager at Chicago Recovery Alliance. My specialty, I'm also a career sex worker, first and foremost. I've been doing sex work since I was 17. Everything from full service to porn to dominatrix work to. So I have run the gamut of sex work. And so I don't just have skin in the game, I have soul in the game. Like, this is my life, this is important. And this is not a project for me, this is for survival. So none of this is altruistic. This is so I can live and we can continue living. So yeah, that's who I am and where I come from. And I'm going to figure out how to screen share really quick. So bear with me. I am a dino hoe. And need to figure out how do I screen share? Share screen, awesome. Share screen, okay, entire screen. Share system audio, okay. Cool, share. I should not have muted. All right, let me see. Was the screen sharing working now? Okay, cool, thank you. All right, let's do that one more time. Bless. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Window, all right, share. Share tab your screen, okay. All right, can you guys hear me still? Beautiful, yes. Thank you. Okay, that was my concern the last time I got muted. Awesome, okay, perfect. So we are gonna start with just an opening statement, a little bit of the history, and what we're doing, what we've been up to, and what our asks are today. So this was put together by Maya and myself. And so what is Decriminalized Illinois? So we call ourselves DecrimIL because Decriminalized Illinois is quite a mouthful. So the purpose of Decrim Illinois Coalition. Our journey of coalition building centers on uniting various stakeholders, sex workers, allies, advocacy organizations, and legal experts around a common goal of decriminalizing sex work. So our focus is on decriminalization eventually, right? But there's so many things that go into the process of decriminalization. There's so many smaller steps, and there's also a huge aspect that is community building, building trust, and honestly, we've had a lot of hurdles and we've learned how to do things the wrong way. This is not, there's no formula for this. We are inventing the wheel as we go. But one thing that I will say that's the most beautiful thing that I've seen about the Decrim Coalition is that we are able to pivot and we are able to grow. And that is why I'm still here. That is why I still do this advocacy work. And the third aspect of this is centering and uplifting the voices of the most marginalized sex workers first and foremost. And so to give you guys a little bit of background, I came into the coalition a couple years after it started, and I reached out to some of our founding members. And so after Decrim New York and California went public, Decrim Illinois was founded in solidarity with those communities so that we can all work together. And eventually, one of our dreams is to hold this on a federal level. Maya, I'm going to pass the next slide to you.
All right, everyone can hear me?
Yes.
So the Decrim Illinois strategy and the approach generally that we take to getting our work done is first and foremost centered around community. It's important to utilize the unique experiences of our community members, especially leaning into that like collective power. Our lived experiences are very important. Second is creating and like really building out a healthy and sustainable board is very important, making sure we have folks that have lived experience, folks that have a passion for this work, and people that are just experienced in being able to do the work long term, because that's very important for like sustainability and making sure that we're stable. The third pillar of our strategy is to work on active and like impromptu items. So part of that is like making sure that we're doing stuff on the state level, the county level, making sure that our board and like our interpersonal interactions are also being evaluated and worked on. And then the last one is kind of tying into the like county and the city and the state, making sure that we are doing everything that we can to get sex work decriminalized on the state level, on our city levels, and hopefully eventually federally. That is a goal and a dream of ours. And so, yeah. Can you go to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay, so over the past,
I'm going to acknowledge that I did not finish the slide. So, but you get the gist. Bless me.
yeah, no, so there's been just a few obstacles and growth points over the past few years that Decrim Illinois has existed. There's been a lot of restructuring, trying to decentralize like the typical like nonprofit structure or coalition structure and really figure out what works for us. And so there has been a lot of changes. We've had community partners that have left and moved on. We've had new community partners come in. And so again, we're really focused on fostering an environment where we all can have our voices heard and like are able to participate. And so, which is normal with any like coalition or nonprofit, you have obstacles and you have points of growth. So yeah, that's kind of what's been happening.
Awesome. And then before we move on to the next part, I'm actually going to go back. And this is, I wanted to make that first point a little bit more eloquent. And a big reason why we are holding this, you guys, is because we want to grow this coalition. We believe in what we're doing. And one thing that we see a lot with nonprofits, fledgling coalitions, and even seasoned coalitions and nonprofits, right, is people come in, we have great ideals. And one thing that we are not willing to do in the Decrim Illinois structure is we're not doing the DEI fetishization. We do not want to bring people in without informed consent about what the issues are in our organization. And we are not willing to bring people on because they're a sex worker, because they're trans, because they're BIPOC, and then elevate them without the proper pay and training. And so I want to be very, very upfront about that, because I think that what makes us grow the most is trauma happens behind closed doors and healing happens in community. And we really want to be open, be honest about the struggles that we've had. And we've seen it happen. I'm going to call it out with Howard Brown. You know, you start with this great ideal, and what happens is we kind of cannibalize ourselves because we get so lost in the sauce that we forget what our original mission is. So that was the point of like us being very transparent about our obstacles, because we are not perfect. We are human beings. We are in the middle of so many things happening globally and on interpersonal levels. And so at the end of this, we're going to do a call-in. We're going to invite people who want to come sit down to come sit with us, but know that we are not perfect, but the thing that we are perfect at is growth and moving forward. So where we are today, so we have currently, Maya, do you possibly know the list of the different committees offhand? Because I could not find that.
Yeah, I know that
All
we
right.
have our policy committee, we have our communications and outreach committee. Hello, sorry, there's a cat that's talking to me. Those are the two main committees that we have right now. It's policy and communications and outreach.
Yes, and we also have a steering committee. And so one thing that I wanted to say is that besides this meeting, we want to start having public meetings as well as our board meetings, and we need more voices at the table. So if you're hearing this, if you have a spark for activism, if you are a sex worker, if you know someone that's a sex worker, we are going to be able to have you come in and do service at a level that is comfortable for you. So beyond the committee chairs and beyond those, like, there is room for everyone and we need your voices. So what is next for us? Our goals: providing a coalition that connects the underground with the systemic in a symbiotic, forward-moving fashion. In action for us, this looks like we have an amazing team. Like we have lawyers, we have people that have worked with Lambda Legal. We have amazing people from AFC and AIDS Health Foundation. We have people from major organizations that have the systemic knowledge and have the experience, right, of like how to do things on like legal levels. I myself am just a humble hooker that has fallen into a corporate world, right? Like I've learned a lot of things by doing it the wrong way, but we are in an amazingly unique position where we get to put people who have lived experience with seasoned professionals and learn together. So while in this process, we provide resource sharing, real world and quantifiable experience to uplift folks with lived experience who desire to transition to other goals. Another thing that I'm going to say on this point is that nonprofit work and coalition work has been the bulk of my resume beyond sex work. I don't believe in degrees. I have a lot of education, but I don't finish them. All of the jobs I've gotten have been because of my work on these coalitions. So if you were a worker or know someone that's like, they need to beef up their resume, they want to learn some actual life items, like we want to build people up while we're doing the good fight. So our final end goal is federal decriminalization and that anything is possible. In the interim, we have a few smaller things that we're going to touch on next. And here are action items. So we need you and we need each other. I've said this before. Trauma happens behind closed doors and healing happens in community. Thank you, bell hooks. This town hall is a public call-in and accountability measure to invite you and anyone who desires a seat at our table. There's space for everyone and levels of service and presence to meet folks where they are at, while providing the opportunity to provide feedback for all of our expansive and beautiful community. Maya, you want to take this one?
Okay, yes, sorry, it was technology
Okay.
trying to get off of mute.
Yeah.
So a lot of folks have kind of asked what's the difference between decriminalization versus legalization, and this is definitely something we will touch on later in the presentation and explain more thoroughly. I know we've gotten this as like a frequently asked question, and so I will just briefly say that decriminalization is what we support. That's why we are Decrim Illinois. And really, it's because it safeguards individuals from abuse and unfair treatment. Whereas legalization creates a lot of like mechanisms and more of like a structured system that actually can create more harms for folks that are engaging in sex work, both as a provider and a client. And so, like I said, we'll thoroughly explain this later, but just know that we are Decrim Illinois and we are in support of decriminalization because it will protect the folks in the community the most, and that's what we want, is our safety is like the priority.
Thank you. All right. And so, Maya, if you want to take this one, and then I'm going to talk about the repeal because I didn't have the time to do the slide for it.
Yeah, no worries. So some of our current projects that we have right now, one of the main ones is the I believe it's a Senate Bill 4410. And so basically it's the Prostitution Investigation Act that is being repealed. And we have the two primary co-sponsors or sponsors for this bill is Representative Gazzardi and Representative or Senator Villa. And so we've been working with their offices. We have a fact sheet that we created that we can definitely circulate to the community for those that are interested. No, please don't walk over here in my camera. Sorry, there's a cat in here. Can you get down? But essentially what it is it's a bill that will help revise language related to children that were trafficked and or exposed to like sexual abuse under the pretense of like child prostitution. So that will help. Oh, I think ACES actually is sharing the fact sheet. So yeah, if folks want to check out the fact sheet, that's very helpful. But basically right now we're trying to garner more co-sponsors on this bill, both in the Senate. We're hoping to get it passed in this upcoming session in January, and definitely could use a lot of help around that. But definitely check out the fact sheet because that will have more information.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm actually going to pull up, in addition to this, bear with me, y'all. I wanted to pull up a little bit more information. So one thing that we've been doing in process beyond just like the larger goal, right, of like decrim on the Illinois level, part of our strategy is we want to go from county to city to state and then eventually federal. We want to warm people up to the idea while building active alliances. Because the idea of like, sex work, especially when you think about anti-trafficking organizations, can be very intense and overwhelming for people. And we're trying to make smaller strides so that A, it boosts our morale, and B, we can actually build those alliances. So I wanted to pull up another cool project that we got to work on. And let me put this in present mode. Thank you. I'm glad I don't have anything weird on my screen. Present. Okay. Present. So this was a really amazing thing that we got to do that we're still in process of. One of our coalition friends, Stephanie Scora of Brave Space Alliance, and a few other people helped us secure a really amazing meeting with our current mayor, Mr. Brandon Johnson. So for those of you who are unaware, there's a prostitution-related loitering ordinance that was put into effect a few years ago. So this ordinance essentially says whenever a police officer observes one or more persons engaged in prostitution-related loitering in a public space, they will tell them that they're loitering, tell them to move, or arrest them. So our issues with this are, what does the word loitering mean? It means existing. And one of the coolest things that I got to do in my tenure at DecrimIL Illinois was I got to sit around with a room full of sex workers and Brandon Johnson's team. And I got to look at each person in the room and I said, what does a prostitute look like? Turns out no one had the answer to that question. And so the issue with laws like these are that if you can't tell me what a prostitute looks like, how are you informing your law enforcement on how to identify them? And this was embodied in a case, thank you, Elizabeth Ricks, for sending this over, Morales versus Chicago, which went to the Supreme Court. And this was a gentleman his kid was like starting a job. He was waiting by a bus stop. He happened to be Hispanic and in Dickies and a wife beater. And he was arrested for gang-related loitering ordinance while he was waiting for his kid, right? So the Supreme Court ruled this unconstitutional because it's too vague. And the issue with these, there's a walking while trans law essentially that was just repealed in New York. These types of laws, almost 99.9% of the time, have a negative impact on Black and Brown communities. And the impacts of arrest are, I mean, you can see, like and they don't just end here. It's like the recidivism, all of the issues. These arrests don't help anyone, and there's no point and purpose to them. So we are in the process of working with Brandon's team and working with a couple aldermen to actually get that repealed. And so those are the smaller things that we're doing beyond just the bigger picture legislation. And those are the wins that we're really focusing on, where it's like, these things are possible, these laws are archaic, and we can actually make a difference by just having these conversations. So that's one of my favorite things that we've been working on so far, and one of my favorite moments from the Decrim Coalition. And then I want to talk about the organizational restructure. And then Maya, after I talk about this, I would love to have you jump in. And I want people to understand like why we keep bringing this up and why this is important. So there's different kinds of organizations as far as like hierarchies. You know, there's the traditional like we have a board, we have this, we have this. And so the focus of our mission for Decrim Illinois is doing a decentralized structure. So we don't want to have people in more positions of power. We don't want to have we can't necessarily have unanimous, but we want to do a more holistic, non-punitive board situation. So we've had some issues with and this happens anytime you get systemic folks working with underground. We're trying to build trust. And this past year for us has really been like, let's just throw the whole idea of what a board should be away. And how do we build this organically around what we need and make everyone feel safe? So that is the point of restructure that we're doing, that we're in process of. And we also want people's voices on like, you know, what has worked for you when you've been in coalitions? Like, what has it felt like for you when you've had to walk away from something, be it a job, be it a nonprofit? So yeah, I wanted to ask you, Maya, if you had any more thoughts or input on the restructure.
No, I think you summed it up perfectly. It's really just to echo what you said. It's very important for us to make sure that we are fostering an environment where everyone's voices are heard, where people are not being tokenized, and really having that lived experience and the passion for the work is like at the center and focal point of what we're doing. Because it just makes for a better work environment. It makes it easier for folks to like want to show up, want to get the work done. When you feel appreciated and valued, it encourages you to continue to do the work. And that's really what we want to focus on. And so we will keep restructuring and we will keep building ourselves up as we see fit, because we just want to maximize how much good we can do in the community and make sure that we are truly serving the community.
Awesome, thank you. And I don't, yeah, we touched on this a little bit, but we focus on a transformative justice healing model. And one of our amazing board members, Sophia, has really spearheaded not just attending panels and workshops, but like encouraged our board to show up. And thank you, Maya, for noting that like we are nebulous. We are willing to change. We are not here to be like, this is how this board is going to work. The thing is we are ever evolving, right? There's a great book called Emergent Strategy, for those who haven't read it, by Adrienne Marie Brown, that talks a lot about, you know, this evolving idea of like, we can change things, things are moving, and we're all kind of on the same level. So we plan to be ever flowing, ever moving, and accountable. So that went by pretty quick, actually right on time. Beautiful. Okay, so we just want to say thank you so much for coming up, showing up, and coming to our public coming out journey. We have been working underground tirelessly. Like, I mean, there have been nights where a lot of us have been up until 2 a.m. working on different facets of this. And due to the nature of this, due to the criminalization, due to the penalization of sex work, and a lot of us, myself, I'm going to say myself, but a few of us on this board are active sex workers still. And this is a very vulnerable thing for us to be coming out with a strategy on a legal level as well as a personal level. So I just wanted to say thank you guys for being here and being present for our work. And thank you to my coalition. So with love from Decriminalized Illinois, we appreciate your time, presence, support, and hope. We hope to see you at our table. And so a special thanks to folks attending this, their presence in the future should they choose, our existing members and allies who have gotten here, and those who have paved the way, and those who have been lost in the fight. And I want to note that like a lot of us have known people who have done nonprofit work and have kind of run themselves into the ground. And a lot of us have lost people, whether it's to, you know, a suicide completion or to an overdose or, you know, to the struggles of this work, be it like murder or murder by cop. And those are the people that we're here and we're fighting for. And that's the shit that we're trying to eliminate. So thank you guys so much for listening to us and dealing with my messy dino host self. And I'm going to stop my screen sharing now. Okay, did that work? Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect.
I believe Valentine is going to kick it off next with some of the pre-submitted questions that we had. So yeah, let's do it.
Hi, everyone. I am Valentine. My pronouns are they, them. Some of you might know me as Cruel Valentine. I am a sex worker and performer in Chicago. And I also, as of just recently, became an attorney as well. And I work with the Free Speech Coalition, which does advocacy work for the interests of the adult entertainment industry. So more on the porn end of sex work. But I have been involved in Decrim Illinois for thousands of years now. I don't know, since 2021, but it feels like a lifetime, pandemic time, right? And I'm very happy to be here with you all today. I'm so happy to see so many folks here. This is just really wonderful and really filling my heart. We got a couple questions pre-submitted. Not everyone I know got around to pre-submitting, and that is okay. People are submitting in the Q&A section on the Zoom as well, so that's wonderful. But I thought I would just start by addressing the two questions that we did get submitted. So first of all, we had a question that goes as follows. What, if any, is y'all's connection to the work that Equality Illinois has been doing around this? My organization has signed on with their decrim efforts. We are definitely supportive of getting this passed and wondering if this group is connected to that work. Thank you. So thank you for the thank you. Very polite. Um, so the coalition is currently working on other initiatives on the county, state, and the federal levels. Um, at the state level, we're focusing our capacity on House Bill 4410, which changes, it calls for automatic sealing of the past felony prostitution, class 4 felony prostitution charges, and it changes some of the language in the code to be a little less stigmatizing. And what is the other component of it? I'm so sorry. I don't have it jotted down in my
I think
mind.
it also
Right.
makes it so that law enforcement agencies
Yeah,
have to have some type of practice where they're not
yes, which is the
engaging in sex with sex workers, which is ridiculous because that should have been a thing, but whatever.
right things that you shouldn't have to say, but yeah. Yeah, that is like the key component is the that it eliminates the ability for cops to have whatever physical contact they want with sex workers while engaging with them undercover or what have you. So that's kind of where we're focusing our effort right now, but we support any effort to call for full decriminalization of sex work. We just acknowledge that that takes a lot of different steps, a lot of different components. So we're really excited to be working on getting that seen through right now. And we're glad that other people are invested and engaged in this fight as well. Let me see. So this is a fun one kind of for everybody. What is everyone's background or reason for getting into this work? So I imagine that would be Decrim Illinois specifically, or any other sex work related advocacy or work that you've done. So I would love to kick it off. So as a sex worker, I obviously have a lot of skin in the game myself. I care about this very deeply, not just for myself, but for those around me, and those in my community who are sex working and have experienced the the consequences of the stigma and the criminalization of our industry and what we do. And that's at every level. I think, criminalization kind of uniquely to our industry kind of seeps out into the non-criminalized forms of sex work as well. So you see everything from, not only people having law enforcement interaction from doing in-person sex work, but then you also see people losing resources and ending up in riskier situations, even if they are working in areas that are completely non-criminalized. So it's better for everyone working toward decrim from top to bottom. Even the most privileged among sex workers uh, experience sort of the lesser forms of the consequences that the most marginalized and endangered of us experience. So it's better for everyone. It reduces stigma and suffering amongst women, people who are immigrants, people who are disabled, people who are marginalized in any way. So yeah, I don't know. It's really important to me. It means a lot to me, and I care about seeing this through and getting to a world where people can work in ways that are safe and secure and where they have choice about their work environment and circumstances. So that's all I want for society, aside from like the fall of capitalism, but that's next. So starting here. Who else? Anybody else want to jump in on their reason for getting involved?
Yeah, I can. Can you, it's, the question is just like, what was the reason for getting involved, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So like I mentioned in my bio, I have been doing drug policy reform work for the past 8 years. And a lot of that entailed learning about the war on drugs, how that was very problematic and really contributed to the downfall of a lot of our communities and just created more harms than it did good. And through learning about that, it really intrigued me, especially harm reduction. Personally, I am a person who uses drugs. I have a lot of friends and family members who also use drugs. I have unfortunately also lost a lot of friends and family from overdoses and just not having access to the proper resources that they needed. And that was something that just really spoke to me and really called me in. And so doing a lot of the harm reduction work, I started to realize that it also overlaps with sex worker advocacy. I and so yeah, so it overlapped a lot, and I do run in a lot of circles where I have friends that do sex work. I have dabbled in sex work in the past, and so it's just something that speaks to like my truth. And I'm like, if I'm doing harm reduction and I'm trying to reduce overdoses and help people use drugs safely, then I should also be doing sex worker advocacy, because sex workers, not all of them, but some of them also use drugs, and that's a big intersection. And really at the core, I just care about helping people, and I'm very passionate about that. And I think that everyone should have bodily autonomy and get to make the decisions for themselves, what's best within their circumstances. And so it all kind of blends together for me. So yeah.
Anyone else want to share out?
I can hop in. Hey everybody, my name's Asis with AIDS Foundation Chicago. I can stand in as one of the liaisons for the organizations that are involved. So AFC leads a lot of the work around the statewide Getting to Zero plan to get us to zero transmissions of HIV by 2030. When we're looking at sort of the equity measures behind that plan, a lot of it does mean we need to look at the intersections of different identities that have past experience, current experience, and sort of future repercussions around HIV transmissions. And we know that one of those populations are with sex workers, folks, anyone really, involved in sex. So it's like a conversation that we need to be proactively taking protections for folks that are involved in sex work. We need to like advanced legislation and policy measures to make sure that we kind of get towards our Getting to Zero plan. Current iteration of the plan does include folks that use drugs, folks involved in the sex trade, and so on and so forth. So for that, we're involved in the coalition and happy to be here too.
Thank you, Aces.
Yeah,
I'm gonna jump in. So Bella Bathory again. I'm also a substance user. I'm a career sex worker. I'm gonna do sex work until the day I die. I am a hoe for life. And so I'm affiliated with Chicago House, which is an amazing organization that provides housing resources to folks living with or affected with HIV. We also provide PrEP services, harm reduction services, and I'm moving on to also bridge Chicago House with an amazing organization called Chicago Recovery Alliance. Echoing what everyone else has said, this is their intersections of all of this. And one thing that I really want to note for folks who are unaware is there are just unfair penalizations on sex workers. One of the things I did when I was the director of SWAP LA was we worked on a bill called SB 233. And this was a state bill that made it so that condoms can no longer be used as evidence. So when you are working sex work, especially on the stroll, which is where sex workers, a lot of outdoor workers are, there is a box on the arrest form that asks how many condoms do you have on your person. This is one of the issues that creates stigma. It also makes it so I did one of the most horrifying interviews with a woman who was an undocumented migrant. She had a pimp, and her pimp would rather have her working the streets with STIs than using condoms, right? And so this woman was using plastic bags for an alternate for condoms. These are the kinds of things where these intersections are important and where we can make those changes, because if anyone should be using condoms, it's sex workers. If anyone should have access to harm reduction, certain things like Narcan, fentanyl testing strips, it's substance users. So that's where the intersectionality in those organizations come in for my heart, and how those things need to change.
I'll give it to someone else in a second. I just want to jump in. ACEs, thank you for clarifying what things stand for in the chat. I know in our little group, we tend to use a lot of acronyms and sometimes slang or industry talk for things. So if we say anything that you're like, what the heck does that mean? There are no stupid questions. We want to break it down for everyone. So if we don't break down a term that you don't quite understand, like, please feel free to ask, and we will do our best to explain that to you. We just have our own little lingo, and sometimes it's easy to stay in that. So yeah, thanks ACEs for the reminder. Anybody else want to share their, as they said in but I'm a cheerleader, your route? What is your route for getting into sex work advocacy? Going once? Going twice? On that note, I just thought of this. I actually, if anybody wants to share, you can submit through the Q&A if you would like to share what got you interested in sex work advocacy, or what brought you to the town hall today, what your connection or link or interest in seeing this work succeed is. And that's whether you're a worker yourself, maybe you work for an interested or potentially interested nonprofit organization or government organization even, or if you're just a member of the community at large who is interested in supporting what we do. So if anybody wants to share, I will definitely read those out if we get any. But let's pop over to, hold on just a moment. Sorry, my computer's freaking out a little. I have too many screens. It's rough. Okay, so we have some kind of frequently asked questions that we tend to get that I wanted to jump to. If anybody feels comfortable jumping in on these, I will read them and we can sort of all tackle them. So one question that we get a lot is whether, I guess we didn't really fully address this yet, so hopefully this will clear it up a little bit. The question is, are there any harms in only decriminalizing workers while still prosecuting the client end of consensual sex work transactions? So making it so basically the seller is like not criminalized and has no penalty, but the person they are selling to, the client, would be at risk of possible prosecution. Does anybody want to tackle this one?
I would love to jump in on this. So
You
this
might.
is thank you. So I'm a sex worker and I'm a nerd. I also had the immense privilege of spending 6 months in Amsterdam and then 6 months in Thailand doing sex work research. And so I got to see firsthand they call this the Nordic model, right? So the Nordic model is the decriminalization where the quote unquote Johns are the person who's paying for it. They are criminalized, right? But the sex workers are decriminalized. And that is what people say is the ideal model. However, in an amazing place called New Zealand, there is complete decriminalization. And the biggest differential here is that any kind of criminalization drives things further underground. The stigmatization makes it so that it's harder, even though the Johns are penalized, there's still a stigmatization against the worker. And when we're doing decriminalization from our standpoint, right, we don't want to penalize. So we're trying to move away from any kind of stigma and move away from love, because that shadow and that shame makes it harder for anyone to speak up. Not just that, so when you're talking about the police and the way that they arrest, they're still focused on the trafficking, right? And I have been present for so many workers who have been caught up in stings where it's like, we're just trying to get traffickers. It gives law enforcement the ability to come down harder on sex workers under the guise of trafficking when that's not their concern. They can still arrest us, they can still hold us, and they can still press us for other information. And so oftentimes what will happen is you will go, and a lot of places, this happened a lot in LA, like entire floors of the Marriott. Like I've seen like hundreds of girls like get popped in one day, arrested in one day. And it's under the guise of trafficking, right? And so like we're looking for the Johns, we're looking for the traffickers, we're not concerned about you. However, they're still going through their bags. They're arresting them because they have so many condoms. They are going through, and Maya touched on this as well. There's a co-occurrence of substance use and sex work. I personally, I need a couple drinks. I don't really want to be sober doing sex work with men. You know what I mean? That's my personal choice. And a lot of times sex workers will have substances on them. And in these rings, the cops will ask when they're setting them up to bring substances. So it just allows more ability for people to be penalized. When you remove the shame and you remove the penalization, it makes it a more open ability for people to speak out when they need help. So that's my input, and I would love to hear anyone else's thoughts.
Thank you for that, Bella. That was really helpful. I think we have some resources we can send out on the Nordic model and sort of the differences between the different models of decriminalization versus legalization versus the Nordic model or partial decriminalization. So people can have that takeaway when we'll send out the recording and any other resources that we share during the meeting. So you all can have those for your reference for future advocacy purposes. Okay. Has sex work been fully decriminalized anywhere else? Spoiler alert, yes. Does anybody want to tackle the specifics of that one? I'm happy to grab it if no one else does. So in 2003, oh, I think we have a file in the meeting. Yeah, Maine is a whole other story. Okay, thank you for that, Hannah. Thank you. That's helpful. So in 2003, New Zealand decriminalized sex work on both the client and the provider end. And since then, it was basically an effort to reduce HIV transmission. And since then, workers have reported a higher quality of life, and the number of people providing and seeking sexual services did not increase, which is one of the big fears we hear about when we talk about decriminalization. We're going to turn like every American city into a red light district, and like our schools will be overrun with like, whatever fear mongering nonsense people try to spew. The data says that that's not really the case, and people will just keep doing what they're doing, but they will do it in a way where they are safer from harm and safer from law enforcement interaction and are able to have more say and more choice in their work. What other stats do we have on that? We also did see in New Zealand that HIV transmission rates did go down after decriminalization. So that seems like a good thing to me, right? In 2022, in New South Wales, Australia, and also Belgium, they both decriminalized sex work that year. And we've also kind of seen recently sort of this prosecutorial discretion model where prosecutors are simply, some prosecutors, namely, and actually my hometown's Ann Arbor, Michigan. That's where I'm originally from, so I'm very proud of this. Washtenaw County, which is the county where Ann Arbor sits. The DA made an announcement in 2021 that he would no longer be prosecuting any consensual sex work cases at all, because he made a whole statement, which was very wonderful, and we can send that to you as well. I can link that in the follow-up email, but I think it kind of boiled down to, it's very stupid to do this, and we don't like it, and it doesn't help anyone, and it's not useful, and it hurts people, so why are we doing it? Which is, yeah, like, join the coalition. So prosecutors, by and large, for people who work in sex work and people who are interested in decriminalization and abolition in general, prosecutors are generally not our friends, but this is one time when a prosecutor did something, really kind of awesome and took the chance to not only sort of just abstain from prosecuting those cases, but to make a statement with a lot of the data that supports why decriminalization is the best method to move forward and protect the most people. So this is a pretty cool move, I gotta say. Yeah. So another question we get is, won't this enable sex trafficking? And doesn't this make sex trafficking legal? And just what about sex trafficking? Which is generally kind of the broad question, like, what about sex trafficking? I mean, I have a lot to say on this one if someone else wants to take it. I think that was part of it was kind of answered in the last question. We haven't turned every town square into a red light district or a brothel. And we haven't, had traffickers just like taking over towns where decriminalization has occurred. Um, but the thing is that trafficking is illegal and it will remain illegal even under a decriminalization model. Decriminalization applies to people who are doing consensual sex work, not people who are being forced into labor. And another thing about the trafficking conversation is, which is very unfortunate, is that while trafficking is an issue and a horrible thing, it is a thing that has happened to a lot of people who are sex workers or have worked as sex workers voluntarily as well. And people kind of ignore that overlap. Criminalization makes it easier for people to fall into trafficking situations. And instead of speaking with sex workers and engaging with sex workers who are often better positioned to assist people who are in trafficking situations or to provide information on, where are people being trafficked, how is this stuff happening, we're not invited to those conversations, unfortunately, with a lot of the anti-trafficking organizations who take a very hardline anti-sex work stance because they conflate the two things, when in fact they're very different. One is a job and one is slavery, to be quite frank. So I know that's a point of frustration for me personally when I when I have those conversations, because it is not an argument that's really based in logic or the truth of how the laws work. It will still be illegal for someone to force someone to do labor of any kind, sexual or otherwise. Another point that's often missed is that there's a lot of fanaticism around like panic surrounding sex trafficking specifically, when the forms of trafficking where you're seeing the most people impacted in the US and globally as well, if I'm not mistaken, is in like factory and farm labor. So people who are doing field labor, people who are building the products that we use every day. So we have a long way to go in sort of clearing up the conflation that has happened between trafficking and sex work, when they are two very different things. And one is absolutely criminal and horrible, and one is, I'm just trying to go to work. I'm just trying to take care of my family. I'm just trying to work a job that accommodates my life and my situation and my disabilities or whatever it is for someone. And it doesn't matter the reason someone pursues it. Another thing I just want to touch on really quick is a lot of well-meaning people who try to advocate for sex work sort of take this like empowerment angle where it's like, oh, like that's so cool, like you're owning your sexuality and girl bossing and yada yada yada, and like you own your own business. And I'm like, it's not an MLM, like I'm just trying to live and do my work. And I think there's a lot of danger in looking at labor and justifying it through a belief that it's empowering, because I think that's inherently not true. But it also makes it so, people who are doing things for other reasons that maybe don't feel empowered, it takes away their agency and it takes away their right to make a choice on what best suits their situation. without it having to be like inspiration porn for someone else. But I think we can go ahead and swivel now because we have some good attendee questions. I do want to share out a couple of the submissions we got on people's reasons for being here. Let me grab these.
Valentine, really
Oh, yeah.
quickly, I just wanted to jump in and ask, because I was looking through some of the live questions, and a few of them are just asking about how folks can actually get involved with the coalition, especially for folks that were involved in the first iteration and would like to come back. What does that process look like, especially as it relates to conflict resolution? So I just wanted to name that for folks that are interested in joining the coalition, we are extremely happy to have you and thank you for your interest. We do have a Google form that I can drop the link for in the chat, and you'll just fill that out. You'll give us your information, and then we will reach out to you and kind of get you brought up to speed and brought on board as far as joining the coalition. And then for folks that are specifically asking about rejoining the coalition and what the conflict resolution process would look like, definitely would love to start having those conversations. If you are someone that was previously involved in the coalition and would like to rejoin, definitely fill out the Google form, and then we can have some more individualized conversations to kind of get an idea of what your concerns are, what your needs are, what it would take for you to rejoin the coalition, and what your expectations would be, and kind of where we're at and how we can meet each other in the middle. And so I will send that link shortly, but I just wanted to answer that before we got deeper into some of the more nitty-gritty questions.
Yeah, thank you for that, Maya. I will also include it in the post meeting email, if in case you don't get it down in the chat. So if you're not able to get it, or you forget to copy and paste it, don't panic, you will get it later. But if you want to go ahead and just say, I'm interested right now, and fill that out and send that on over to us, that would make our day. Yeah, okay, so we have a few people who sort of put in the Q&A just why they're here, what interests them in this. So I'm just going to read their little bits real quick. So Kara says, I am a dungeon manager who has worked at too much D&D, a dungeon manager who has worked as an assistant and screener and booker for workers in both BDSM and full service sex worker communities for the last 15 years. I want to use more of my time to do more to keep my community safe. That's awesome. Red, hi Red, says, hey comrades, I'm a longtime sex worker and organizer with the Support Hose Collective. I was part of the first iteration of Decrim Illinois, and I'm so thrilled to see and hear that all of y'all's labor and care toward this work. I'm involved in this work because my community's lives depend on it. Absolutely. Sir Testimony says, I'm a Chicago pro-dom and full service sex worker, interested in total decrim and motivated to get involved towards that end. Awesome. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, of course, to people who didn't share as well, because no pressure here. All right, let's jump into some of the Q&A that was submitted today. Okay, so the link is being dropped and we'll send that out, so that's good. What type of support would you like from organizations who are not exclusively doing policy work for sex workers? I have thoughts on this. I'm happy to toss it to anybody who wants to chime in, but I'll kick it off. So I think, any organization that is willing to take a pro-decrim stance and a pro-sex work stance is helpful. So you don't have to be exclusively working on sex work or directly related issues as a part of your organization's mission. But if the decriminalization of sex work and promoting sex worker safety and security is something that is aligned with your mission, we would love to hear from you and collaborate with you. And you are welcome at our table anytime, to contribute in whatever ways you can, as much or as little as that is. And I think Aces might want to say something, answering the question live, or is that just because I answered it?
I can add
So
in a
yeah,
bit too.
oh, go ahead.
For folks that are somewhat familiar with like the policy advocacy work, there's always room and opportunity for folks to sign on as a organizational supporter when it comes to fact sheets that are created in the future, when it comes time for folks to submit witness slips and let the legislative body know that there is more of an organizational presence in support of something that's protecting sex workers or in the best interest of the Decrim Illinois Coalition. So that's something that we're always receptive to receiving as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everybody who's been involved in our coalition, I mean, we've had a couple organizations that are exclusively sex worker based and sex work based, but we have folks who are, doing queer advocacy in the larger sense. We have folks who are doing HIV advocacy, and all sorts of things. So it's definitely not something where you have to be like honed in on this one thing, because sex work intersects with everything. We are we are people deserving of rights. So it's really nice to hear that people from sort of outside of the immediate sex work bubble are interested in helping and supporting this work. So thank you. Okay, Chelsea says, I run the Illinois Harm Reduction and Recovery Coalition and appreciate very much how challenging it is to come out and share your truth publicly. Sex work often intersects with drug use. How can the community supporting people who use drugs through harm reduction help? Maya, would you possibly want to speak to this?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say folks that are doing harm reduction framework based work in the community can definitely reach out to us. We would love to have more community partners, but essentially my biggest thing is like when I'm doing harm reduction, when you're having conversations with people, sorry, and you're doing a needs-based assessment, if you are able to obtain information that like they do sex work, and things of that nature, then you're able to give them just more resources. I know with Swap Chicago, when we do outreach, which I'll be doing that in Garfield Park today, we give folks Plan B, we give them condoms, we have female condoms, we do HIV, hepatitis C testing on the spot. And so there's definitely a need and room for folks that are doing harm reduction work to kind of work in tandem with us doing sex worker advocacy, because they really do overlap. But the primary idea and the primary goal is to figure out what the needs are of the people in the community you're serving and figuring out how best to address those. But yes, shout out to you also, because harm reduction is my heart and I love meeting and seeing people that are doing harm reduction, because it's just such amazing, it's challenging work, but it's amazing work and you get to save lives. And I think that's one of the most rewarding things. So yes, thank you, Chelsea, for your question. I hope I answered it. If I did not, please let me know and I can try to type something.
Well, thank you so much, Maya. Okay, are there any resources or talking points to use when talking to our communities to help them come on board with decrim efforts? I think a couple of the top ones off the top of my head are just the difference between someone choosing to do sex work versus someone being trafficked and forced into labor. Um, I think that is just one of the top things that really just like drives me bananas trying to clarify that to people. So like really driving home that point is very, very important. And also being able to distinguish between decriminalization versus legalization. So you have decriminalization, where it simply removes any penalties for doing the act, versus legalization, where it creates a structure of regulation around it, which, may involve fees, permits, specific times and ways that you need to be tested in certain places, that may not necessarily, like, it creates a bunch of barriers to access essentially. And so what we've found, I think, a lot of workers can probably speak to this and I hope would agree. We are self-regulated in a way that I think a lot of people can't fully grasp, because they see SVU and they think that people are just wandering the streets alone and like don't think, and they're just doing it because they're, whatever situation that people dream up around sex work and like how people conduct themselves if they are a sex worker. Um, but we're like, how mushrooms have like underground networks? We are very well networked and we take care of each other. We take care of ourselves in ways that a lot of people who are non-sex working, or civilians, or civvies, as we like to call them sometimes, a lot of folks don't. So sex workers know better what sex workers need than, you know, people sitting around a table making decisions about us without us there. And then, of course, distinguishing between decrim legalization and then partial decrim, like the Nordic model, which has like 17 different names at this point, which is very annoying because they keep rebranding because they, I guess, get called out for it being a terrible model. And they're like, oh, but now we're going to call it the equality model. That's better, right? And people are like, equality sounds good. We like that. Okay. And, you know, people get duped. So being able to clarify those differences. Anything else that y'all want to contribute? We'll also send out some resources for some of the sort of the top talking points. Okay, cool. If you have any follow-ups on that, just, oh, go ahead.
Hi there. So yeah, speaking to that, I always really like to equate the decriminalization versus legalization aspect with sex work to what happened with California during the Green Rush, right? So we had the legalization of marijuana, and who benefited from that, right? The government, taxes, and old white people. Sex workers were very self-sustaining, and there's like this fear, and people are like, oh, you're a sex worker. Most sex workers I know have much lower rates of STIs because we have to take care of our bodies, right? There's this idea of like getting tested like a porn star, getting tested every 2 weeks. And the other thing with the regulation that I really want to drive home is that we are self-regulating. We are the mycelium complex, right? We do have that underground network of taking care of ourselves. But I also, for me personally, I don't want the government regulating my pussy, and I don't want them getting money off of it. I do not want my pussy taxed by the government. I don't want them regulating it. I know what's best for my body, and until, you know, somebody else is doing anal on rent week, I don't need their opinion. So a little crass, but those are my thoughts on that from your favorite thought.
Thank you. That's another really good point. I mean, I like having like permit fees and like all these extra things sort of assessed for working under a legalization model. It takes away the opportunity to work from people who need it most, because it creates, you know, those hurdles that people have to jump over. If somebody can't afford a permit, or somebody doesn't have transportation to the one testing site that you're allowed to go to because the government says so, then they're unable to work. And if they're unable to work, then they're unable to get the permit. And if they're unable to get the permit, and they're unable to work, so where does that put people? It puts people in desperate situations where they may fall into, you know, a state of further into a state of poverty, or, you know, possibly into a trafficking situation. So people having control over their work is paramount. It's absolutely mandatory. And as to taxes, that's a funny thing. A lot of people sort of assume that sex workers don't pay taxes or whatever. Like when we talk about this, we talk about like these extra fees that are assessed and extra taxation on people for doing this work specifically. But sex workers pay self-employment tax. We pay tax. And we are no more or less likely than anyone else to commit tax evasion or tax fraud. It's just a myth. There's no data saying that we are more likely to do that, or that there's a more frequent occurrence of that. It's just a presumption. Yeah, so that's another annoying myth to clear up. Cool. How can I become involved with the organization as a current sex worker? Are you currently looking for volunteers, and do you have any upcoming events where I can connect with the community? Ooh,
This one.
yeah, go for it.
Okay, yeah. So if you are asking in relation to joining the coalition, I can definitely redrop the involvement link and you can fill that out. But I do have to shamelessly plug Swap Chicago, because we are a Black and Brown Indigenous-led sex worker advocacy organization, especially our Chicago chapter is, and it's ran by all former or current sex workers. So if you are currently engaging in sex work, we would definitely love to have you join our org. I can privately I can answer the question here and send my email, and you could reach out to me and we can talk about what that would look like as far as you getting involved with Swap Chicago. We are always looking for volunteers. We do a lot of street outreach. Like I said, I'm doing outreach literally after this town hall. So we also always are looking for folks that want to do outreach, or if you are interested in policy, I can bring you on board. You can join the coalition, but I will put my email in the chat. And if you are interested in joining either SWAP or Decrim or both, just reach out to me and I will make sure that happens.
Cool. Yeah, I also see a few minutes ago someone asked, what is the current state of Swap Chicago and are they active? So I think the answer to that is yes. So definitely
Yes.
get in touch with Maya and get involved with what Swap is doing.
We're back. We are very active. We are hosting events. We have an art show coming up in March. We did a really cool burlesque show for Sex Worker International Awareness Day back in, I think that was in June. The months are blending together, but we are active. We are up and running our outreach programs a lot, doing a lot of street outreach. And we're trying to get some of our other programs restarted, like our housing programs, our educational programs. We're trying to get our legal clinic back up and running as well, trying to help folks seal and expunge their records. So we are very active and we definitely need help because it's only like 4 of us right now. So yes, if you are interested, I will send my email in the chat, and please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I would love to bring on any excited individuals that want to do the work and get involved.
Thank you, Maya. So Red asked, where can we follow your work online? Funny you should ask, because not only is this a town hall meeting, it's actually kind of the launch of our website. So it's like a little launch party, I guess. I'm gonna paste our link in the chat for everybody. Bookmark it, baby. And we also have an email you can get in touch with us at. I'll just put that below because it's related. Did I type that right? Okay, great. So yeah, please check out our website, get to know a little more about our work and our mission and what's next for us. Yeah, and you can definitely get in touch with us anytime via that email. What else do we have? Ooh, I know a couple of folks who would be good to speak to this. Was Decrim ever a part of the conversation or considered to be part of that package during the last big round of criminal justice reform in Illinois? The Safety Act and bail reform specifically. Thank you for putting on the town hall. Yay, thank you. Thanks for being here. Does anybody want to jump on that? I know a few of our members were closely involved in that work. I will say I'm a little less qualified because I wasn't working directly on this, but let me see what we can get. Is anybody, I know some of our members might just be in the chat as well.
Do we have Elizabeth or Cara here?
I thought so, but maybe I'm mistaken. Okay, we might have to get back to you on an answer to that because I don't want to misspeak. I only know a little bit about it, and I know there are folks who could do a better job explaining that, but I'm happy to include that information in the follow-up email that we send. So I'm gonna earmark that for myself so I don't forget. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Okay. And okay, here is an organizer, lawyer, body worker, and facilitator, and a dancer that's been trained by lots of amazing sex workers throughout life. Yes. Here for the communities to support and for the practice of making new and a new and better world together. Amen to that. I think that's pretty wonderful. Of course, if anybody else has a question, I'm happy to answer it, or we're happy to answer it. But that's a nice little like final submission that I think that really speaks to what we're all here to do. I hope. is to create a better world together. Yeah, I'm very excited for what the future holds for us. And I think with y'all's help, those who are interested in participating, on whatever level, we need all types of folks, all types of backgrounds and skill sets, if you're a graphic designer, if you are somebody who's really good at organizing events, if you're really good at promotions, PR, advertising, marketing stuff, we love that. Like we're not just looking for one type of person. It takes all kinds to make the whole of what we are trying to be and what we're trying to do. So I am super stoked about all of this. I'm really glad that you're all here. I want to also thank folks who have contributed to the fundraising, whether you contributed when you registered for the event through Eventbrite, or if you submitted through the GoFundMe. It's been really, really heartwarming to like see that support come in. We are currently in the grant application mill, sort of churning around and seeking more funding, but it's really nice to get people involved on a more direct level who are able to contribute in that way. And even if you are unable to contribute and you were just somebody who, shared it with someone or whatnot, that has been, really a godsend to us. So I'm going to drop that link in here as well. If anybody didn't see it or, wants to contribute or is able to share it with folks. If you've got some philanthropic homies who are looking for places to put their money, we would be happy to take it. A big part of, we have a lot of things that as our work grows will cost money, but a big priority for us has been for people who are not participating in this work as somebody, doing it during their day job on behalf of a nonprofit organization, where they are, it's the middle of their workday and they're getting paid for what they do with that time anyway. So folks specifically who are sex workers, who are volunteering to do this work, a priority for us has been granting a stipend on a monthly basis to people who participate, and that's something we have not been able to do the past couple months due to a shortage of funding. We had a very generous donation that we've been sort of working off of for a while as we've applied for grants, and unfortunately we've run out of funding. And so if you are a grant person, I love you. Please come talk to us. Please come hang out with us. We have a great team who's submitting grant applications, but we could definitely use some more horsepower behind that. So if that is something that you excel at doing, if you love doing, we would love to hear from you as well. Or if you know somebody, like if you know a guy, let us know, and we would love like an introduction email to anybody who can advise on that front or possibly contribute to some of the labor on that front, because we would like to get to a more financially well-oiled position where we are able to offer those stipends again and keep compensating workers who are not being otherwise compensated for this time. I think it really is vital to our mission overall and seeing a better life and a better world for sex workers, but it's also a matter of leveling the playing field because we're not just a bunch of nonprofits nonprofiting about. We are a mix of nonprofits and individuals who are invested in this work on a very intimate and personal basis. And so leveling the playing field and taking away some of the hurdles to being able to participate in this work. And, time is money when you're a sex worker. And so we would like to be able to offer those again. So that's definitely a part of our mission. And, hopefully traveling for legislative testimony and lobbying and all of the wonderful things that come with doing this work. So yes, so thank you for the GoFundMe. I know I just said I would drop the link, but then I went on an impassioned rant. So sorry about that. Let me grab this really quick.
Also, I just wanted to speak to the question that just came in. Interest in harm reduction. I have a friend interested in harm reduction, decrim, and grant writing. Where can I have her reach out? So we're gonna drop that the involvement link again. Faye's weirdly her job is in grant work at her job, so very familiar and wanted to direct her. So yes, send her over. Also, I'm going to say it again. So I work with the Chicago Recovery Alliance as their testing manager, as well as Chicago House, tangentially, and I help with their testing team. And Maya also works in harm reduction. So please just send her over. I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Maya will drop theirs, and let's connect. It's really, it took a brothel to raise a Bella, and I'm here to put the common community, and we do everything better together. And I just wanted to echo Valentine and say thank you guys so much for coming, for attending. This has been, the culmination of years of work, and it feels so good to like come out again. And I've known Valentine for about 64,000 years, and
Yeah.
and a few other people on this panel, and it's just a lot of us didn't make it here. And some people that we knew very closely did not make it here. And I'm just like, I'm getting weepy seeing the work and seeing those of us that have survived. We are living really hard and fighting really hard so we don't have to have any more loss. So please share, please connect with us. Please let's connect and just be kind to each other. And on a personal note, you guys, if you guys are struggling in community, we tend to cannibalize each other. Let's just be nice, love each other, send each other money, give each other hugs, and let's save the world together. That's how we do it.
Thank you, Bella. I'm also going to add my email if I could be copied on that, and the Decrim email as well. That would be awesome if you reach out about the grant writing. I would love to be looped in on that. Or if anybody else wants to reach out for any reason. I dropped our web link, our website link, as well as the Decrim Illinois main email. If anybody has any questions, any follow-up, any concerns, anything that they want to share with us, or if you're interested, you can email us, or if you're interested in participating, just use the sign up link and tell us a little bit about you and what you would like to bring to the table and what you'd like to get out of this experience of working with us. And hopefully we can work on continuing to build together. And yeah, share the GoFundMe with the homies if you're able to. That would be wonderful. And we are screening candidates for fiscal sponsor right now. So if you know anyone any organizations who are interested in supporting in that way, that is another great thing to reach out to me about if you are able. But I think that just about brings us to our time. Do we have any other questions or thoughts? Okay. Well, if not, I will go ahead and say adieu on behalf of all of us. We are so grateful for your participation today, and rest assured we will send out an email with everything we chatted about today, and then we will also include, some of the resources and the sign up link and the contact information that we've discussed. So you'll be able to refer back to those and hopefully keep in touch with us. And this is not the last you'll be hearing from us for sure. We will be having future events and updates coming out. So get looped in, check out our website, and we hope to talk to each and every one of you soon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all so much. This was very beautiful.